All right, so this is problem number 6, and on this problem you're going to be doing your regression equation. And remember, your regression equation is y is equal to a plus bx. So b, that's going to be called essentially your slope, and then of course x is going to be your input, your independent variable, and of course y is going to be your dependent variable. Now I already go ahead and give you x and y. And of course, here's the equation and so forth, but down below I'm going to show you, essentially, you're already doing all these calculations. Let me show you down below, essentially what you're going to plug in. All right, so as you can see, you're going to have to go ahead and set up the same table like you've been doing. You'll do your x column and your y column. You take your differences, you square both of them, then you got to multiply. So you'll still get x bar, y bar. You get your sample mean for each of them. You got to get your sample standard deviation like you've been doing for x and y. And then notice when you go to get your correlation coefficient, there's your numerator divided by n minus 1 times your standard deviation. So that essentially is b. That's going to be, oh, not b, but that's going to be your correlation coefficient. Now to get your slope, remember the equation, and I'll kind of remind you what that equation is. Let me write this off to the side so you can kind of see what they're doing. To get that slope, we'll say that's b, that's going to be equal to your correlation coefficient multiplied by your standard deviation of y divided by the standard deviation of x. And they're essentially showing you that right here in this calculation right there. So they're taking 0.752 and multiplying that times 1.304 divided by 2.702. And when they do that, that's going to be your b. That's going to be your slope. Now, because our equation is y equals a plus bx, we basically just figured out the b part, the slope. Now we need to figure out the y-intercept, which is a. And your formula for that, I'm going to write that right here. It's a is equal to your y bar minus b times x bar. So now that you got b, that's what they're going to plug in right there. So you can plug that in there. And then what you get is your a. And then essentially right here then, that is going to be your regression equation, which is y is equal to 3.77 or 3.76 plus 0.363x. And then whatever you plug in for x will give you a value for y, if that makes any sense. And I think in this one, I think they wanted you to plug in a value of 7 or whatever. And then that's where they got the 6.308. All right, so that's how you do the regression. And I think that is essentially, yeah, so, and then here's essentially when they're saying when x is 7, y is what? You're just plugging 7 into the equation, and that's how they got the 6.31. All right, so this is number 6. Let's check out number 7. And again, you're essentially doing a lot of practice. Here's your big table. You notice your columns, the same we've been doing. You got to fill in all these pieces. You've got to get your x bar, y bar. You got to get your standard deviation of x and y. There's your correlation coefficient. Here is your slope. And then, of course, there's going to be your y-intercept. And then you can see how they plug it into that equation. You should be able to get y is equal to 19.12 plus, it looks like this case it's a negative relationship, a negative 1.743x. And again, they plug in 7 into this equation, and that's going to give you your value of y. But again, just going back up, you can see how, again, you just have to plug in everything. You have to fill out this whole column. Just do your calculations. I would plug it into an Excel spreadsheet and then just plug it into your formulas to get all of these values. So there's a lot of redundancy, and you'll have to do this a couple more times. So this is problem 7. Here's problem 8. And again, on problem 8, here's your regression equation, a plus bx. Notice you got number of rooms and kilowatt hours. So x will be the number of rooms, and your kilowatt hours is your dependent variable. That's going to be y. And they're going to have you plug for a 6-room house. You're going to plug in 6 into your equation to get your number of kilowatt hours. Down below, I'll show you, essentially, you got to set up your table again. Here's your x and y's, and you just have to do the math. Once you set this up, you'll have to get that, get to that equation. And again, just to remind you, you've got to plug in to get b. Just remember your formula. It's your correlation coefficient multiplied by the standard deviation of y over the standard deviation of x. Once you get that, then you can solve for a, which is y bar minus b times x bar. Once you figure out those, you can get y is equal to a plus bx. That's the equation you want to get to, and then whenever you plug in any number for x, that's going to give you the y outcome. All right. Okay, I think you got, this is number 8. You got 2 more of these. So once again, notice in this one, they went ahead and just kind of labeled them x and y for you. So you got contacts and sales. And again, down below, you can see here's your long equation. I'm sorry, your long table, x and y's. And of course, you know, you just have to fill in these different pieces. I think you can handle that. This is, again, more repetition. Eventually, you get x bar, y bar. Here's your standard deviation of x and y. You've done that several times at this point. But again, go back and refer to a couple of the previous illustrations if you forgot how to get that. There's your correlation coefficient. And then, of course, here they're showing you that the slope is b is 2.19. And then they're showing you how you plug these numbers in to get a. So, of course, there's your y bar minus your b times x bar. And then, of course, they want you to plug in 40 into x to figure out your estimated sales. Okay, all right. And so I think, and then down below on this one, they just to kind of guide you if you get stuck as you're practicing, they do give you the individual calculations that you should come up with in case you're off by a couple decimals. You can see how they're arriving at their calculations. All righty. All right, so that is problem 9. And then the last one, again, they want you to graph this one. And again, you've got assets and sales. So I say you got X and Y again. And so then they want you to do a scatter graph, look something like that. And then of course, on this one, they want you to do the correlation coefficient. They want, here's your regression equation, y equals a plus bx. And then you're gonna plug it in. You're gonna plug that into X to figure out Y. And you can see down below, this one looks like they used Excel, but you can go back and use some of the previous calculations. You can set up your table. You should be able to, to arrive at these same numbers. So notice there's your B, there's your y-intercept, A, and then here's how they came up with that equation. All right, so once you get to this problem, everything else is pretty much redundant on your last 3 problems in your chapter 13 homework.